They say a man never truly feels old until his children stop needing him. But no one tells you what it feels like when they stop wanting you. My name is Mark Ellison, and at 50, I was a father without a family. 5 years ago, I thought I had everything that mattered. 2 sons, Ethan and Ryan, both grown, smart, full of fire. A house filled with laughter. Sunday dinners and the quiet satisfaction that maybe, just maybe, I'd done something right as a father. But life has a way of humbling you when you least expect it. After my divorce, things began to slip away. My wife, Laura, got the house. The boys stayed with her. I didn't fight it. I thought I'd visit every weekend, that love could survive distance. I was wrong. At first, they answered my calls. Short conversations, polite, mechanical. Then weeks turned into months. Texts went unread, birthdays forgotten. Eventually, the silence became normal, and I convinced myself they were just busy living their lives. Until one day I saw Ethan post a photo online, the whole family together, my ex-wife, my sons, her new husband. They were smiling. I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't even in their story anymore. That was the day I realized I had become invisible. I spiraled, lost my focus at work, started drinking more than I should have. One night my boss pulled me aside and said, "Mark, you've been like a father figure to this company. But maybe it's time you took a break." A break. That was his polite way of saying I was done. I went home to an empty apartment. My sons didn't call. My ex didn't care. My career was gone. My purpose was gone. The nights were the worst. Quiet, heavy, endless. I'd sit by the window, scrolling through old photos, remembering when little hands used to grab mine just across the street. I wondered where I'd gone wrong. Maybe I'd worked too much. Maybe I hadn't told them I loved them enough. Maybe I'd been too hard when they needed me soft. But whatever it was too late to fix. Then, one night, something shifted. I was walking home, rain pouring down, when I passed a small gym. The lights still on even at midnight. Inside, a man around my age was training a young boxer, shouting encouragement with every punch. For some reason, I stopped, watched. Something about it pulled me in. The grit, the discipline, the fire. The trainer saw me standing there and waved. "You looking for someone?" I hesitated. "No, just watching." He smiled. "Then don't just watch. Come in. Nobody gets stronger standing in the rain." That line hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken. I stepped inside. That was the night everything began to change. The gym smelled like sweat and rusted metal. The kind of place where dreams were built one rep at a time. It wasn't fancy. No mirrors, no polished floors, no air conditioning. Just the sound of heavy bags thudding and men grunting like they were fighting their own ghosts. The trainer introduced himself as Luis, mid-50s, built like an oak tree, with a face carved by time and fight scars. "You ever trained before?" he asked. I shook my head. "Not really. I used to run a little." He smirked. "We all used to do something. What are you trying to do now?" I didn't have an answer, so I just said, "I don't know, I just need to feel alive again." He nodded slowly. "Then show up tomorrow. Same time. Don't be late." And for the first time in years, I had something to look forward to. The next night, I was there early. Cheap sneakers, worn-out t-shirt, and a body that creaked with every stretch. The first session nearly killed me. 10 minutes in, I was gasping for air, sweat pouring like rain. Luis didn't go easy. "Your body's soft because your heart's been soft," he barked. "You want to change your life? Change how you move through pain." Every muscle screamed, but I kept going. Every push-up felt like punishment for every regret I'd ever carried. Every missed birthday, every harsh word, every silent night alone. When I got home that night, I collapsed on the couch. My arms burned, my lungs ached. But for the first time in years, my mind was quiet. And so it began. Every night after work, or after trying to find work, I'd go back to the gym. I trained with teenagers, men half my age. They laughed at first, called me old man, joked that I'd break a hip before I learned a jab. But I didn't quit. Weeks turned into months. The fat melted off, replaced by something I hadn't felt in years: strength. purpose. Luis became more than a coach. He became the father I never really had. He'd tell me, discipline isn't punishment, it's freedom. It's how you earn back respect, not from others, but from yourself. And slowly, he was right. My mornings started earlier. My drinking stopped completely. I began applying for jobs again, not because I needed validation, but because I wanted to test myself. I got rejected again and again, but every rejection felt smaller than before, less painful. One night after training, Luis handed me an old gym hoodie and said, "You're part of the team now." It was just a faded piece of cloth, but I swear when I wore it, I stood taller. Then something unexpected happened. A young man named Caleb joined the gym. About my son's age, lost, angry, full of pride. Luis paired us up for drills. Caleb rolled his eyes. "You serious? You're pairing me with him?" Luis didn't blink. "You'll learn more from him than you think." At first, Caleb mocked me, joked about my age, my slow punches. But every time he taunted, I answered with persistence. He'd get tired, I wouldn't stop. After a few weeks, something shifted. One night, after sparring, he said quietly, "You don't give up, do you?" I smiled. "I used to. Not anymore." He nodded. "Wish my dad was like that." That night, I sat in my car for a long time. I realized I'd spent years begging my sons to talk to me, when maybe what I needed was to become the kind of man they wanted to talk to. The next morning, I called Ethan. No answer. Ryan didn't pick up either, but I left a message, just one sentence. "I'm doing better, boys. I hope you are too." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Little did I know, that simple message would lead to something far bigger than I could have imagined, because a few months later, my sons would walk back into my life, and not the way I expected. It was a Sunday morning, one of those lazy, sunlit days when the world feels almost forgiving. I'd just finished my morning run, drenched in sweat, my lungs burning but my spirit clear. That's when my phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in years. Ethan. For a second, I just stared at it, afraid it might be a mistake. Then I answered, "Dad." His voice cracked slightly, uncertain, like a man testing cold water. "Hey, son," I said softly. He hesitated. "Can we talk?" When he showed up an hour later, I barely recognized him. Taller, sharper jawline, a touch of exhaustion around his eyes. But still my boy, the one I used to carry on my shoulders. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "Mom told me you were struggling." I didn't know it was that bad. I smiled faintly. "It was, but I'm doing better now." He nodded. "I can tell. You look different, stronger." For the first time in years, I didn't feel small in front of my own son. I didn't feel like a failure begging for approval. Then he said something that stayed with me. "Ryan's in trouble, Dad." I didn't know who else to call. Turns out my younger son, Ryan, had dropped out of college, chasing a startup dream that had gone sideways. He was deep in debt, sleeping on couches, too proud to come home. Ethan wanted me to talk to him. That night, I found Ryan in a small diner outside town. He looked lost, like I once did. When he saw me, his eyes flickered with guilt. "Here to lecture me, old man," he said, defensive. I shook my head. "No, I came to listen." That caught him off guard. We sat there for hours. He poured out everything. The failures, the broken partnerships, the feeling of not being enough. And for the first time, I didn't try to fix it. I just listened. When we finally stood to leave, he said quietly, "You're not who I remember, Dad. You've changed." I smiled. "So can you." It was the night something inside me clicked, not just as a father, but as a man. I realized how many people out there were like Ryan, men who'd lost their footing, too ashamed to ask for help. I'd been there myself, and I wanted to do something about it. So I started small. I rented a tiny space, one room, bare walls, one punching bag. I called it Second Round Fitness, a gym not for athletes, but for men who'd been counted out, guys over 40, divorced, jobless, broken, like I once was. Luis helped me set it up. Caleb volunteered to train. We had no fancy gear, no investors, just grit and purpose. The first month, 3 people showed up, then 5, then 10. Word spread, not because of marketing, but because of the feeling. Every man who walked in wasn't just lifting weights, he was lifting his life back up. One day, Ethan dropped by unannounced. He watched me train a group of men in their 50s, one doing push-ups for the first time in years, another laughing after losing 50 pounds. After the session, Ethan said, "You really built this?" I nodded. "Yeah, from nothing." He looked around the room, the sweat, the noise, the hope. Then he said softly, "Ryan needs this. So do I." That night, both of my sons trained beside me. 3 men, 3 different generations, sweating side by side, rebuilding not just bodies but broken bridges. It was messy, emotional, healing. And I realized this wasn't just a gym. It was my redemption. But I had no idea that this small, gritty dream, built from pain and loss, would soon explode into something much bigger. Because within a year, Second Round Fitness would turn into a national movement, and the very company that once fired me would come begging for partnership. And this time, I'd be the one sitting behind the desk. They say success is loud, but mine began in silence. In the early mornings before sunrise, when I'd mop the gym floors myself, the smell of sweat and disinfectant mixing with cheap coffee. No investors, no staff, just a dream and a list of men who needed a second chance. Within 6 months, Second Round Fitness wasn't just a gym anymore. It was a lifeline. Every man who walked through those doors came carrying something: failure, heartbreak, addiction, or regret. And every single one of them left a little lighter, a little stronger. We started sharing their stories online, real stories. No filters, no fake smiles, just raw transformation. A video of a 60-year-old man deadlifting for the first time went viral. A clip of a single father running his first mile hit 2 million views. Suddenly, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, sponsors, partnerships, the world wanted to know what made this place so different. But I knew the truth. It wasn't about muscles or training programs. It was about redemption. One morning, while I was helping a client stretch, I saw something that stopped me cold. Ryan, my youngest son, standing at the front desk in a suit. He smiled nervously. "Dad, I've been working on something. I think we can expand this." He'd created a business plan, an online coaching version of Second Round Fitness, complete with workout programs, live mentorship, and community support. He'd even coded a prototype app himself. For a moment, I just stared at him. This was the same kid who once called me a failure. Now he was calling me partner. Within months, we launched the Second Round app. We offered affordable subscriptions, mentorship for men over 40, and personal growth challenges that went viral again. The gym grew. Investors started calling. I turned them all down. Then, one day, I got a call from a familiar number. The company that had fired me 5 years ago. The HR rep's voice was almost trembling. "Mr. Ellison, we've been following your story. The board believes your program could be a great partnership opportunity for our corporate wellness division." Corporate wellness. The same people who threw me out were now offering me a deal to train their employees. I met them in their glass office, the same one where I'd once been told I was too old to keep up. I shook hands with their CEO, smiled politely, and said, "Funny how times change, huh?" He chuckled awkwardly. "Well, Mr. Ellison, you've really turned things around. The board admires your resilience." I leaned back and said, "Resilience is what happens when people like you underestimate people like me." I didn't say it with anger, just truth. Calm, earned truth. We signed the contract that day, but not for them to hire me. I bought a 30% stake in their wellness division. I walked out of that same office building, the same doors where I once carried my things in a cardboard box. Only this time I carried a pen, the one that signed their paycheck. That night when I got home, Ethan and Ryan were waiting for me. We didn't talk about money or success. We just sat together, laughing, remembering, forgiving. After years of silence, my sons finally saw me again, not as a man who'd failed, but as one who'd fought his way back. But what I didn't know was that something even greater was still ahead, Something that would prove that redemption wasn't just about rebuilding your life. It was about rebuilding others. Because second-round fitness Yina was about to go global, and I was about to become the man my sons once wished I'd been. 2 years after that contract, second-round fitness wasn't just a gym or an app. It had become a movement. We had franchises in 6 cities, hundreds of trainers, and thousands of men who shared one common story. They had fallen once, but refused to stay down. Our motto, "It is never too late for your second round," was painted on every wall, printed on every shirt, and lived by every man who walked through our doors. I had more money than I'd ever dreamed of. But that wasn't the victory. The victory was watching a 60-year-old man hug his grandson after finishing his first marathon. The victory was a divorced father who rebuilt his confidence enough to start a new career. The victory was seeing my sons, Ethan managing operations, Ryan running digital, working side by side with pride in their eyes, not pity. Every morning, I'd get to the gym early and just watch. The laughter, the music, the sound of weights clinking, it all felt like life breathing again. One morning, while I was sitting in my office, Ryan walked in holding a small box. He placed it on the desk and said, "Open it." Inside was a watch, not new, but repaired. The same old wristwatch I used to wear when I worked at that company that fired me. The glass was polished, the leather band replaced. Ryan smiled and said, "You left this behind when we moved years ago. I wanted you to have it back, because it's time." I looked at him, confused. "Time for what?" He grinned. "Time to stop surviving, Dad. Time to live." That moment broke me. For years I had been climbing, fighting, proving, rebuilding. But I hadn't stopped to appreciate what I'd built. I'd been given something most men never get. A second chance, not just at success, but at fatherhood, respect, and peace. A few months later, I stood on the stage of our 10th second-round location. Cameras flashed, people clapped, and behind me was a massive banner that read, "Founded by a man who was told he was too old to matter." I took the mic and looked out at the crowd, hundreds of faces, young and old, men who had been broken and rebuilt. "My name is Mark Ellison," I said. 5 years ago, my sons walked away from me. 10 years ago, I was fired. 15 years ago, I gave up on myself. But life wasn't done with me yet. I paused, feeling my throat tighten. They said I was too old. They said I couldn't start over. But I learned something along the way. When you lose everything, you gain one priceless thing. Freedom. The freedom to start again without fear. The freedom to write your own ending. The crowd went quiet. Even my sons looked emotional. So, if you're sitting there thinking it is too late for you, it is not. You're just between rounds. Get up. The bell hasn't rung yet. The room erupted in applause. Some men were crying. My sons stood beside me, both placing their hands on my shoulders. In that moment, I didn't feel like a failure who made a comeback. I felt like a father, a leader, a man who finally became who he was meant to be. Later that night, I drove back to my old neighborhood, parked outside the same small house where I'd once sat in silence, wondering if my life had any meaning left. The porch light flickered, the windows were cracked, but I smiled, because the man who had lived there once was gone, and the man who replaced him didn't need a mansion to feel rich. As I stood there, I whispered to myself, "You did it, old man. You finally became the man they wanted to be." And with that, I turned the key in my car, the old watch ticking on my wrist, a reminder that it is never too late to rise.